Welcome to Beyond Just Business, the podcast for those who want more. More clarity, more direction, and potentially more meaning. We explore the thinking behind success, the habits that shape performance, and the questions that go deeper than profit margins. If you're ready to challenge the obvious and rethink the way life and business work, you are absolutely in the right place. Welcome back to another episode of Beyond Just Business. We are now into season 2, would you believe? And we've had great feedback so far on season 1. But at this point, we always encourage people, if you do have any questions, concerns, or topics you'd like to be covered, keep them to yourself. We don't want to talk about them. No, you're more than welcome to reach out to hello@beyondjustbusiness.com, or myself or Paul separately through our different contact details. And anything you ask will be in confidence, and we're more than happy to discuss it on the podcast. So you're very welcome back, Paul. Great to see you again.
You too. Still alive?
We have to pretend we like each other for the videos. So it's all of that. After this, I'll be going back to my dressing room for a large shandy. So this week, I think we're going to jump straight into it. We're going to talk about, we had a brief chat about it beforehand, but just the word expectations. So I'm just going to throw that word out and see what you come up with.
It's funny, just as you said it. I was reminded of the book Great Expectations. But expectations, yeah, I suppose that, and again, I suppose just as we were exploring it just before we press record, it's funny how, yeah, growing up is what I'm being brought back to and what was expected of us. So whether as a kid and you're growing up and what you're expected to do, what your future is going to look like and all that kind of things. And then when you finish college and you're being asked, okay, so what's the college degree you're going to go for? What's the job you're going to go for? So it's actually quite interesting when you can go back as far as you want, but actually there's expectations right throughout our whole life by other people. And actually, I suppose then when you start to question the things that you do, how much are you doing it in order to fulfill the expectations of somebody else as opposed to yourself? So that's, I know that's deep. But yeah, no, that's the first thing that comes to mind. Well, what's on your side?
You know what's funny? As soon as you said it, and I think a lot of people gloss over the role of that. And it's funny, as soon as you said throughout our lives, but let's just take your formative years. So you're born, or let's even precursor to that. Someone's having a baby and you're expecting. So ironically, it's in the title. But what, or not your baby. Anyway, I'm not getting into that side of it either. I identify as who I am. Forget the rest of it. Like, I'm not getting involved. That is a bar I am not picking up. You imagine that someone's having a baby and they're expected to do certain things. So let's imagine society's version. You don't drink, you don't do drugs, are you not taking your vitamins or whatever else? And then you think, yes, that's a health expectation. But then that bleeds into, oh, they're 6 months old and they're not crawling yet, or they're not doing this yet.
Yeah.
And what's crazy, as soon as you said it, I was kind of going, geez, that's actually from the absolute inception of everything. It's this thing of, this is what you're meant to do next.
Yeah.
And that free-form idea of, there's the clay, let someone mold it into whatever way. And everyone has that story. Like, I think of, as a child of the 80s, I challenge anybody to find a photo of my mother without her with a cigarette in her hand while holding babies. That was just the 80s. It was fun. So when
it
you think
good for them.
It's like a King's Speech, it's science. But I think when you weigh these things up, it's from the very inception of everything you do. And it starts off, they should be doing this, they should be doing that. And then you, like you said, you're into school, you should be at such a level doing X, Y, Z, and then whatever else. And I think I glossed over that. Like, in my mind, I was immediately kind of going, all right, sure, what are you going to do with your life? That's what's expected. But the expectation or the muscle starts at the very beginning. So it's almost it's like a Pavlov's dog. You're being trained from the get-go as to what you're expected to do at a certain stage in life.
Yeah. Funny then, what comes to mind is around what we expect of others. So what? Okay, maybe you shouldn't go there.
I'll go there. It's one of the greatest lessons I've ever learned. I thought it was a great lesson. Carry on.
What we expect of our spouse or our partner, what we expect of our kids, family members, clients, even for that matter, all different relationships. We actually do have our own expectations for ourselves. So yeah, look at it. It's as we're exploring it, it goes back from childhood, but even we can actually set the bar high for other people that are in their lives as well, of what we expect from them. And is that the right way to look?
I'm going to jump in and answer. There's no one else here, so I can jump in myself.
Okay.
Pipe down, John. Will you? So no, I think my opinion is, and this is, it was actually Gary Vaynerchuk that made it prominent in my mind about 10 years ago, where he really drove into the idea of people who were entrepreneurs or business owners, and they were complaining about everyone else in the business not wanting it the same way the owner or the CEO did. And he was looking at them going, how dare you? Why would you think someone who's an employee would think that way?
Yeah.
How would you're expecting them to have that hunger, drive, goal, whatever it may be, or dream that you have? That's not how that works.
Yeah.
And you're setting yourself up to be disappointed, whatever else. But that's everything then.
It is, yes. Actually, when you think of it.
Yeah. And I think any of the times I've been disappointed, this is a lesson for me, and it wasn't the other people's fault, was that my assumption that someone else would do it because that's what I would have done. And that was completely wrong.
Yeah. So we actually, so in some respects, actually, yeah. So when you think about it from the business environment, but even from a personal environment, so pretty much every single aspect of your life, we have our own inbuilt expectations. And if that bar is set too high, actually, we're the ones that are actually getting frustrated. So you get the example of the employer expecting X, Y, and Z from their employee to put in the hours, to have the same hunger, to have the same drive, to take the same ownership and so on. But they're an employee. They're not part of the business. They're, in that respect, in terms of they don't have a shareholding, they don't have a profit share. So why would they? And that's an expectation that's in the mind of the business owner. When it comes to relationships, we have expectations of other people. But actually, is a bar too high? Should we have a bar in the first place? If we start to lower that bar, then what does that look like? Will it actually result in a happier relationship? And does it get back to our own values of what's important to us in terms of, yeah, like what you said, in terms of you jump in certain circumstances. So we're expecting other people to live by our own values and what's important to us, as opposed to everybody's unique, everybody's different. So why would we expect somebody to live the same way as what we live? So yeah, when you think of it from one simple word, expectations, it actually explores into every single area of our lives.
Jesus, what have we done here? This is a far too complicated conversation. 40 minutes. It's like asking someone on the bus, what's it all about? And then you get off at the next stop. But I think what's interesting when you say that, though, is it's also a learned behavior, though. When you think of someone who has that, like we all know someone who keeps meeting the same type of personality. Like I keep dating assholes, or I keep dating someone or whatever. But then the ironic thing is they might meet someone who's
Don't talk about Jen like that.
Our second marriage, I'm telling you now. Mark 2 will be, this is going to be beautiful. She's going to be tall, though, because they still need someone for the top shelf. But no, I think what's interesting is, I think that let's say when you said about the bar being lowered, right? The other thing that we can then overanalyze on the other side of the spectrum is any old tat will do. So if you're striving for more, so like someone could say, let's say if someone's dated someone of a certain, let's use the dating world, but let's say someone who's dated someone who's been abrasive, rough, they haven't been kind, they're not thoughtful, they take everything for granted or whatever else, and then he meets someone who holds the door open for them on the first date. It could be a revelation, and then suddenly, but then again, the bar has then been moved higher, but the bar has gone from being on the floor to being half a foot off it. Like, I do wonder, are expectations a necessary guardrail to maintain some sense of, just playing devil's advocate, some sense of, let's say, striving for more, as opposed to this idiocracy where everyone is just whatever, and then anything with the pulse seems like it's doing okay?
Agreed, but actually, I think, okay, so I'm just reflecting on what you said. I think when we have expectations of other people, we're the ones that are suffering, meaning that we're the ones that are trying to get other people to fit our map of the world.
Yeah.
But equally, when we have expectations on ourselves, that's equally just as damaging. So we could have a high expectation that everything has to be perfect. We have to be punctual, we have to be on time, we have to do certain things in a particular way. If we don't, if we don't, well, then we start beating ourselves up about it. So we actually set our own expectations as well. And some of those expectations, so even if you take, for example, so the business owner that expects that they've got to be a success in every single business that they touch with, or that they are a success in every single aspect of the job that they do. So is that an impossible expectation to have? And therefore, with those expectations that we actually put on ourselves, sometimes they may not be healthy. What about weight loss? So we expect that we have to have, again, social media enforce it, so that we have to have a particular physique. I've given up on that long time ago. Once you get over a particular age, the body never conforms. So yeah, like we're being bombarded left and center in terms of what is expected from our physique and our body and our fitness. And if we don't meet those expectations, then are we actually less than somebody else? And there's a deep question.
Oh man, Slimming World are going to have a field day with this one. But no, yeah. And I suppose what's interesting about it is even when you think what role expectations have played in society from, let's even say the early 1900s to now, what was considered beautiful.
Yeah.
Staying on the weight loss, what was considered beautiful. And let's even say like those who were, or you weren't meant to have a tan when you're younger because that was or in the older days because that would be deemed to be working class.
Yeah.
Then a tan was a sign that you could afford to go away. Then weight, someone who has more weight on them is healthier than someone who's too skinny, is that, and all of these different parameters. But what's interesting about it is, I suppose, the social element of what we look at, let's say from like a pack animal concept, is you have someone who thinks independently, but then they get like I had an interesting chat with my wife today about that, which was you can do as much as you can to arm your kids with the what you feel are the tools that are going to help navigate, but then you're letting them out of this protected environment and all bets are off. And it doesn't necessarily have to be the Colosseum where there's a lion on the street, but there's a social interaction that you can't control. And there's someone else's perception of life. And if you've someone else that's got a challenge going on, that will then impact or imprint on that child, which then gets brought to your child. Yes, as you say it, I'm a little bit stumped because what's funny is I'd be extraordinarily hard on myself no matter what. Like I could land a great client, I could get a great result. And I had one today, like we'd left the property, a pre-closing inspection, beautiful day. And I'm walking around this place kind of thinking, oh, I'd buy it myself. I was like in the moment, and then immediately when I got back, I was like, oh, did I do the right thing? What about this? What about that? And I caught myself, but I realized I was basically undoing the good work I had done.
Yeah.
Knowing I negotiated the right way, I got it for a great price, all things considered. It was the right price for my client. We saved money, blah, blah, blah. But my expectation of myself, even though all that happened and the clients were delighted, that negativity sweeps in and kind of goes, yeah, but. And what's funny is if I think back to it now, whether she was joking or not, my mother, when we were doing tests, if I got 89% in a test, now back then 85 and plus was an A, I have no idea how the system works now. Don't ask. Like I H2, A2, I have zero. It sounds like a blood type to me as far as I'm concerned. So anyway, but if I got 89%, she'd say, where's the other 11%? And if you said it to my brother, he'd get a twitch. Because I think he'd go, yeah, like it wasn't a case of good job, let's all go for cake. It was like, where's the other 11% gone? So what's funny about that is maybe there's a subconscious element in that where you're kind of going, yeah, you've done a great job, but.
Yeah.
And that expectation is but.
Yeah. Fill the gap.
Yeah.
God, it's dangerous, isn't it?
What's scary is that it's very individual. It's not like we all stop at a red light, let's say, and that's our general marker in society to stop at a red light generally, unless you're an amber gambler, like some people are going through the orange light and hoping for the best. But expectation can have a number of different definitions for different people.
Yeah. And even thinking about it further, we have different signals of expectations as well. So, for example, if you're a financial advisor, you're somewhat expected that they're going to turn up in a decent car and a decent suit.
Yes.
Because if they don't, it doesn't really say much about their financial acuity, does it? If you go to a doctor, you expect them to turn out in a white coat. So we do actually have different signals, using your traffic analogy, for different situations and different people. So if, for example, take yourself and myself, if I was to turn up in a desperate car, barely four wheels on the car, and a dent on the boot or whatever, and if I was to turn up at a client meeting in a banger, basically, that would set the bar, that would set the expectation, that would set the level, I would suspect, as opposed to the car that I do actually drive. And I do happen to drive a really nice car. But yeah, I think we have those little signals, those little prompts that actually tell us where do people fit in society. Even take it in your line of work, the address. Are you living in D4 or some other area in Dublin, or are you living in the country? Not there's definitely, don't get me wrong, my dad is from Kerry, so there's nothing wrong with be living in the country. But it's
Mm.
just saying we do actually have those little triggers inside ourselves, and those little signals that we expect different people to have those signals. And if they don't fit into those signals, then do we either reject them? Do we accept them? Do we whatever?
Do you know what's funny? It's actually a minefield because my most recent newsletter at the weekend was actually like almost the expectations of people who live in a house or wherever it may be.
Hmm.
And there's this almost apologistic mentality of come on over. They'll almost slot it in across the board. And it's like weight loss. Like, oh, I keep trying to lose about this holidays, lights out, whatever. But when I think of a house, and it's a very personal thing, like you said, and I think that probably the best way to, I don't know, if I was to look at how I would arm myself to, let's say, deal with expectation, and that's as a mature 39 and 12-month-year-old, that if I, yeah, I can't, in about 2 months, I'll be 39 and 24 months. So just that's keep remembering that. But if I was thinking of it that way, that as a mature adult, I can probably notice things more than I would have when I was younger. But I think if it was drilled into me from a younger age, that everyone's version of success is different in whatever, let's say, whatever phraseology would suit. So let's say my kids, I look at college now, I do not hold stock in what college pertains to be. And that's not about, I'm all for education, but I also think there are millions of people that you will see, speak to, read that have never set foot inside a college, but they are lifelong learners. They've
Yeah.
gone to events, they've read books, they challenge things, they try, they fail, they go again. And sometimes that, I think that is the best way to learn. What business lecturer do you know is a multi-billionaire that just happens to moonlight as a business lecturer? So a lot of it isn't necessarily practical versus theoretical.
Mm.
But I think it's instilling almost that individualistic thing where it's, you can't, everyone's going to have those expectation voices that come into their head. You should do this, you should do that. You're not as tall as this, you could, whatever. But maybe it's arming people at an earlier age. And I don't mean a participation badge either. I don't mean you came 11th in the race, here's a badge for showing up. I do think disappointment is also a lesson.
Yeah.
But maybe it's a case of, look, teach someone from a young age, like, look, whatever it is you're interested in, explore it. It mightn't be the thing you want in 10 years' time, but by exploring it, you're relieving the hold of what is the perception of, you want to do this, you have to be here by this age. Like, how many people do you know that studied something only to go into something else and they were better because they'd already studied what they didn't want to, because they had an inflection point to understand? How many people do you know that went in and studied accountancy, law, whatever it may be, only to go and do something else 10 years later by virtue of realizing for 10 years that they didn't want to do it?
Yeah.
And that's probably all expectation based.
Yeah.
But everything is.
Yeah. Like the more you look at it, it is. And then maybe the question we should have is, the expectations that you do have, are they your expectations, or are you actually living your life according to somebody else's expectation with everything that you do? So you could say, so go back to what you were saying there in terms of you're trying to arm your kids, and yet you don't want the society to break down completely. But yeah, I think there's an inbuilt thing within all of us that we want to evolve and we want to be better. So we want to grow. So I think if you're to set your own expectations, and other people talk about stretch goals and so on. But yeah, we constantly want to be stretched and we want to grow. But is it from our perspective, or is it from somebody else's perspective? And again, what comes into mind is people will do things from a self-esteem perspective where they're trying to please other people in order for them to make themselves feel better, as opposed to purely from a self-worth perspective. And that's where you're doing things for yourself because you want to feel better, but it's not about anybody else. It's purely just for you. So the expectations that we're actually setting for ourselves, are we actually doing it to try and please somebody else as opposed to trying to please ourselves?
Like, I find it fascinating when you think of, if you were to do some sort of an anonymous poll, how many people are miserable because they do the things they think they're supposed to do, either unconsciously, as in, oh, I thought that's the way it was, or if you ask them to think of one person, it could be an aunt, an uncle, a father, a mother, a key person in their life of influence, I would say a whole heap of people are absolutely, and it doesn't, and I don't mean like miserable as in a broad spectrum of their entire life, but there could be an area, like someone could continue to play hockey or football because that's what they're expected to do. Like they're the third in the line of family that all did it, and that's just the way it is.
Yeah.
And if you break the family connection, like if you even look at business, it's the first, what is it? The first generation sows it, the second generation grows it, and the third generation blows it. When they think of like the growing that kind of legacy piece. So if you imagine somebody who started a business, and anyone listening to this who's maybe second or third generation, you're coming at it from a different perspective. The person who built the business, you will have no, people who haven't built the business have no concept of it. They can understand what it might be like if times are inverted commas tough. But if you weren't the one that created something from the inception, you have an entirely different outlook than the person who did start it. And for good, for bad, that's both. But when you think of how many people continue on in legacy businesses as well, who do things, whatever, it could be a factory, it could be a brand. And in their mind, if they had the freedom, maybe they want to go do something completely different. But there's these constraints in the form of familial responsibilities, maybe. As in, this is the way it's always been done. That's our name above the door, whatever it may be. That's got to be a tough one as well, because then you've got someone who lives a life. They're wondering, when's the bit that I can do what I want to do? But they don't know what they're meant to do because. So when you think about it, so many breakdowns that people have, and I don't mean to, I'm not doing a broad stroke of everything, but there must be just this like awareness that suddenly hits them over time by virtue of kind of experience or something happening or nagging at them, or as you say, the feather, the brick, and the truck. The feather gives them a tickle, the brick hurts a little bit more, and the truck decides to take you out. That to me strikes me as in everything though. Like dessert before dinner.
Yeah. Yeah.
Imagine going out and be like, I'll have the tiramisu, please, and everyone else is having the burrata, and you go, "What's going on?" It's mad. Like it sounds delicious, but it sounds mad when you think about it. So let's leave it with one question that you could get someone to ask themselves, and if anyone is listening to this and this is something that's resonated with them, what would you get them to either ask themselves question, or what activity could they do to maybe just explore that a little bit further?
I think it's actually down to, are you doing things to please somebody else? Where does the expectation? So it's exploring, where is that expectation coming from? So are we dressing in a particular way because it's expected by something else, whether it be society or a job or our perception of employment or whatever? Are we driving a particular car because, again, it's perceived to be, we've got to be driving either the latest model, or we've got to be driving an electric car because it's seen by society to be greener and so on? Are we pursuing a particular career because it's down to a family legacy or whatever it be? So I think the question really is, where are your expectations coming from? And basically to look at everything and look at, okay, so what is the expectation there in the first place? And where does that actually originate from?
And funny enough, an exercise that I think I'll do after this is actually an interesting one, which is activity. And then almost like the top title could be like the driver, and is it me or is it they? And they could be anybody. Like it could be society, it could be your parents, it could be whatever. But when you think of it, like, and that was a lesson I learned when it came to my car. I made so many stupid car decisions in the past. They were all for other people, and they weren't for me. And we've chatted about this before, but it's a very interesting thing for people to note. So I think it'll be worthwhile for people to ask themselves that question. There'll probably be in Business Plus magazine, there'll be a plethora of companies for sale because the second generation are fed up. So don't blame us if companies start going up for sale because people want out of the family business. But we'll leave it there for now. Hopefully that's given people something to think about. And we'll catch you next time on Beyond Just Business. And that's it for another episode of Beyond Just Business. If it gave you something to think about, or it helped you see things a little differently, we're delighted. But make sure you're following so you don't miss out on the next episode. Stay curious, keep questioning, and we will see you next time.